Good evening and welcome to the Problem of Being Awake. My name's Ben, I'll be your host as always. And tonight I want to talk about this controversial idea of white privilege, which thankfully has been taken out of the context where it was put and is now put into the public domain for debate. As with all woke issues, now that's a great thing, because for a while there was only a few of us who were able or brave enough to talk about it. So white privilege is one of the most offensive things to come out of the woke movement. And that's saying a lot, because a lot of offensive things have come out of that. I can't think of one good thing except that it stopped. That's the only good thing I can do. And believe me, I spent 4 years researching it on a daily basis with discipline. And discipline means hard work and absolutely sticking to a schedule. So I've done 2 hours of research minimum on anything to do with wokery, or the whole vocabulary, including anything to do with the trans movement, the identity politics, and everything that sits below it, and especially critical race theory, which I've done a huge amount of research on. And in England, we're teaching the American syllabus of it. Why? Because we don't have the same problems here. We can't justify teaching it here unless we teach the American syllabus. So why do we make the decision to teach it here? Well, someone in government's got to answer for that, and they will. But white privilege is a very offensive term. And I had a comment. It's just the rudest comment I've had on YouTube. I can't even actually say it on a video, but it said, "And this coming from a white guy," and then ... You evil, racist, and then it's a 4-letter word. It begins with C. And I thought, I can't, and then she put loads of exclamation points. Like, when someone's put like 6 exclamation points, well, you've ruined your point then. But I thought, well, hold on. One, that's the most beautiful definition of an oxymoronic statement I've ever heard. You're accusing me of being racist with no evidence, yet proving that you are racist by calling me that with no evidence and using horrible language to justify it. So white privilege, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to walk through my life, and I'm going to see how much of it I had. But first, I will say one thing. It's a great phrase. To whom much is given, much is expected. Now, that doesn't apply to race. That applies to abilities. That applies to characteristics, character, resilience, all of these things. If you've got the strength to protect other people from harm, you must use that strength to protect other people from harm. If you have an intellect to write a book that can produce ideas for people, you have the responsibility to use that intellect to do that and write that book to help other people. So to whom much is given, much is expected is not anything to do with race or skin colour, which in a previous video I mentioned, if we just stopped talking about skin colour for a year, we'd see the debate change completely. So white privilege, okay. So I'm going to go through my life. I don't want to be too graphic, but forgive me if I do end up being that way. So, okay. One, before I start, we're all privileged. Anyone watching this has access to the internet. That's privilege. I'm privileged. I ate food tonight. Okay. And it wasn't cooked by me. It's actually cooked by someone I love. So I'm privileged in that respect. If you've ever had cake, pizza, ice cream, a steak, a burger, or been to a cinema, seen a film, or even have access to books, you are privileged. So there is no reason or rhyme to put the word white in front of the word privileged. Privileged is about how you start out in life or how you end up. Now, how you start out in life is what we would call privilege. So I'm going to go for it. So, my first memory is being dragged from my family home because my parents were getting divorced, and that was it. And then I lived in a very dark house with a clinically depressed mother for a very long time. I was a carer from the age of 7. My school years, I wasn't able to fit in. I was too wild. I was quite aggressive. I was quite large as well. I had my growth spurt at age 12, so I'm pretty much same size now. But so I used that white privilege to defend people who are being bullied because I don't like bullies. And then anyway, I ended up getting expelled from 7 schools in 2 years because of my white privilege. And then I went through a period where I kind of felt like I was fitting in with a group of people, and then I took over kind of in a leadership role, the group of people, because of my white privilege, even though they were all white. And then times moved on, and wasn't a leadership role as in, it was just a kind of natural people deferred to me. What we're doing this weekend, it would generally be up to me. As in, I say, well, this is what I think I want to do. And because the thing is, I would do what I wanted to do anyway. And everyone knew that. So that's what happened. So then my 20s hit, and I clawed my way to success every time. So I was successful in my first career, and then continued to be very successful in my first career. Every time I fell down, I got back up, and I got thickened and hardened by that. And I've fallen down more times than most people could fathom. As in the amount of times I've been told in a hospital bed or in a tent that I'm about to die is now incountable, but it certainly was somewhere in the 40s a while ago. And I've been told it 6 times this year, so I would say it might well be 50 plus. But I don't die for some reason. And actually, after the life I've lived, I would quite welcome it. I would have no problem with it. I've made my will. I've done everything. I put everything in place because I've had 6 heart attacks this year because of my white privilege. You see, I was locked up in a foreign jail and tortured daily by people who were racist towards me because of my white privilege, and the stuff they did to me there was irreparable. So it ruined every hope and dream I ever had because I had white privilege. And now I find that I came back and I metabolized a huge amount of PTSD. It's called complex PTSD. And I'm an ex-psychiatrist, retired. The reason I'm retired was that was the period of my life that I actually vaguely enjoyed, was helping other people who had PTSD, who can come back, mainly veterans, but people who've been abused as well, and also people with serious anxiety disorders and any kind of anything that's traumatic and panic disorders. Traumatic is a very, very big world, as in the most traumatized person in history is a girl who was in a car crash where no one got injured and it wasn't really she got whiplash. But the effects it had on her mind is different. 2 people lost their legs in the Madrid car bomb in 1989. One of them blew their brains out, and the other one was the first legless man to climb Everest. Now, I'm sure he had help. I've checked that one out. He didn't magically do it, and he didn't get to the top, but he got quite high. So one person's trauma is different from another's. So I became a trauma therapist, and I was quite well renowned. I managed to reduce the model from 6 months to 4 weeks by being tough on people. People who've been through hell don't need someone to tell them how bad hell was when they haven't been there. And that's, I think, the essence of wokeism. Nobody comes back. Doctors and borders don't come back and become woke. Peace workers don't come back and become woke. because they don't need to, because woke is the suggestion of being aware of social injustice around the world. That's very different from living in it, experiencing it, having to wait for life-giving water to come from the sky rather than from a tap. And yet, my white privilege did lead me to those places, and I had to do that. And I can honestly say that I've been the victim of the most sadistic acts that a human male can imagine. And I used to say, except bar permanent death, but I did die quite recently for about 2 minutes. I had to be resuscitated. So there you go. I've had it all, but white privilege has taken me all the way. And every time I fall down, I get back up again. Do you know why? Because I've got white privilege. That's why. And then I fall down again. And I've fallen down so many times recently, it's hard to get up because that's just a physical thing. It's hard for me to get up, and it's hard for me to walk very far. And I like to say I'm not terminally well. Let's put it that way. And I will die for my white privilege. How did that happen? Because 4 years ago, as of the 1st of November 2020, 2 girls were being sexually assaulted up the road. And my white privilege decided that the police weren't coming. There were going to be 15 minutes. I would go down and deal with it myself. And I realised quite quickly that my only option was to take the place of the girls and fight back as hard as I could. And I did until I got metal to my head, like 20 times. 10 or 20 times, they estimate about 100 to 115 miles an hour. At which point I was felled and I was then stamped on, my face was kicked in, and my head, and all 4 of the assailants, because most rapists, funny enough, don't like being interrupted when their prey is allowed to get loose, especially not by someone who's got white privilege like I have. So I ended up picking me up by 4 arms, by all 4 limbs, and using my head as a battering ram against a brick wall. They left me for dead, expecting I was dead, but I didn't die again. I don't know why I don't die. I wish I did. I wish I knew that there was a way, but I don't think there is, except that I am dying. It's just very painfully and slowly and agonisingly, because I've got white privilege. So my white privilege has led me to do what? Okay, so my white privilege has led me to an unhappy childhood. It's led me to a misguided teenage decade. It's led me to helping people for 10 years overseas, and then again another 10 years in the UK helping people with mental health, and then finally helping two girls to escape from a horrible fate, a fate which I actually know intimately. And so my white privilege has taken me all that way. And then the next 4 years after that, I can tell you, they've been hell. But I can still talk to you over the internet, so I still have some privilege. But anyone who uses the phrase white privilege better have been to a number of third world countries and lived there. Otherwise, say nothing to me about white privilege. You don't know what it means. And I'll end it there.